Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to be looking at the structure of bills and resolutions. Primarily for you all, we'll be talking about bills. As a congressperson, your main priority is to present bills that help the American people. These bills go through committees and then go to the floor of Congress and then are voted whether or not to become law and therefore binding on all citizens, or are voted down and cease to exist. So today we're going to be looking at how do you write such legislation. The first question for you to ask is, what are bills and resolutions? Bills are commonly called laws. They use actions and policies to achieve objectives. So a congressman writes up the bill and then it can be voted into law or not. And then bills are also used to form different agencies and committees. So you yourselves are placed in different committees. Those were created by different laws and orders of Congress. So you yourself are a product of that original legislation. Resolutions, which are not really going to deal with much, they are stances on issues. They are declarations of how the United States feels towards a certain subject. So these you would primarily see if you were dealing with international policies, like how we feel about foreign governments, actions that they take, and etc. How we, the American people, feel about a given subject, as opposed to us setting policies and goals and objectives, as are common in bills. So we're primarily going to focus on bills today. So the first thing to look at is format. What format does your bill need to be in? It's not as simple as writing an essay or doing a 5-paragraph summation of what you want to do. There is a certain format and process that's needed in order to make a bill valid and look professional. The three biggest things to remember when composing a bill are these three format functions. The first is the title/docket number. These two can be separated into their own two items or be put together as I've done here. These are what goes at the very top of your bill to give it a distinction, so that way your peers can go through the different bills and go, okay, this is this one, this one, this one, and this one. The docket number has a very simple formula. It is your category, whether it's a bill or resolution, and then a random 4-digit number. So an example would be, for category, science and information would be the category, and you all are primarily writing bills, so it would be science and information bill, and then any number of your choosing. But it must be a 4-digit number. So you could pick 1865, 2022, any of these numbers are perfectly acceptable and completely up to you. Some people like to try and find a number that is significant to the topic at hand. So if you can find a 4-digit number that fits with your bill, then perfect. The second part of it is the title. The title can be anything that you wish it to be, so long as it relates to the bill itself. So it could be the simple Make America Smart Again bill. It could be an act of Congress to promote the general welfare of citizens. It can be whatever length or whatever level of simplicity you desire. So just keep in mind that it should relate back to your bill. So you don't want to have something as the title that has absolutely nothing to do with what you're really talking about, because then it doesn't make any sense. So that's dealing with the title and docket number. The next part that's very important is your line numbers. So you will have line numbers for the entire bill on the left side margins. So let you know, the docket number will not have a line number. The title will not have a line number. This little phrase right here, this is the predecessor clause. So this is basically saying that whatever you've written down below, it's going to be enacted by Congress. Okay? So for these three parts, you don't have any line numbers. But when you get here to line 1, that's where the writing begins, and that's where you start numbering every time you go down a line. So every time you're typing and then, oh, I've just gone down, you put line number, and then keep going wherever you left off. And we're going to look at an example here in a second that's going to give you a better idea of what you're doing. So naturally, the first step in the writing process should be pick your topic. Each of you has been divided up into a different committee with its own different set of challenges and topics and issues of concern. So using that as your sort of lens, you should pick what you want to write about. And so it should be something that Congress can control. So that's very important, is don't pick something that's so out there that Congress really doesn't have any jurisdiction over it. Topics should be able to be defended. So don't pick something that is like so out there that no one can defend it. Like something that goes so against what's already law that it just wouldn't be possible. And then the third one is pick something that you would want to argue for. Even though you're in an educational environment, you should still pick something that you can feel somewhat passionate about and have a desire to debate. If you don't desire to debate it, then there's really no point. This should be something that interests you and makes you want to learn more and defend your bill. So up here you have a sample bill. This was taken from the state championship student congress from this past year. And so this is one of the better looking bills. You see here they have the docket number. So they have domestic bill 9262. Great. A title, a bill to increase the budget for prisoner education. So that tells me what I'm going to be talking about in the bill. You have the little stance, be it enacted. And then we start the line numberings. And so an important thing to look at with the line numberings is we're going to talk about different articles and sections. So these are different parts of the bill that all come together in the final product. But in between each section, you leave one line blank. So it's the same thing as indenting in a paragraph and having that space in between your paragraphs. It's that same basic idea. So we've done our Article 1, written it out all nice, skip a line to give it space, and then continue on to number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5. So that's an important thing to remember, is give that space in between each part of your bill. And so with that, let's look a little closer at what each of those articles is, what's its purpose, and etc. And we're going to keep up with the example that's given right there. Article 1. In Article 1, you state the name of the bill or the intention of the bill. So our author already told us what the title was. She gave us a wonderful title. But now, what is the intention? What is the purpose? What is the bill doing? So you can either have Article 1, which is with the Roman numeral, or you could do Section 1, which you can use a typical number 1. Okay? And then you follow with the colon. So, her Article 1 states, the United States shall increase funding to the Federal Bureau of Prisons in order to provide all imprisoned individuals the opportunity to participate in higher education. So that's a very simple statement saying this is what the bill is doing. That's all that your Article 1 has to be. You can elaborate further and give a little bit more of it. Like if there's a second part that it's doing at the same time, you can put it in there. But a simple sentence like that, which shows me exactly what's happening, that's what you want in your article or section 1. Section 2 and Article 2. This article deals with any definitions that you have. This is really important in the debate aspect because If you define something differently than someone else, but you don't have it written down, then that's area for an even more vicious debate over whose definition is right. So this can also be the time to provide additional information, qualifications for benefits. If you had a bill that says that people get $1 million, what are the limits on that? What are some of the requirements? What are some of the qualifications needed in order to achieve that? So our author put for Article 2, for the purpose of this bill, higher education will be defined as, and there it gives you the definition, and then an imprisoned individual will be defined as, and there's the definition for that. So this author really used it as a defining point. So that way people understood. In her first article, she mentioned higher education and she mentioned imprisoned individuals. So that tells you what she's meaning by those. Article 3. In this article, you will list who is responsible for enforcing and executing the bill. This is important. You've told us by now what you want to do, what are some of the definitions needed, what are some of the qualifications. Well, who's going to ensure that this happens? Like, who's going to make sure that it happens? And that's where this section comes in handy. Our author says, the Federal Bureau of Prisons and the United States Congress will oversee this program. Perfect. That means that it's these two entities' jobs to make sure that this stuff happens. If you don't say who's responsible for it, you have no guarantee that it's going to actually happen. So it's important for you to make sure that you do your research and find out, okay, if I make this law about drones and who's able to fly them, who is going to be the person to enforce it? Who's going to be the person to make sure that this is possible? So it's up to you to do that extra bit of research so that way you can answer that question. Article 4 is when you state when your bill is going into effect. This can be very simple. Some people pick just a date that makes sense, like January 1st, July 1st, etc. Some people decide to go off a fiscal year, which, in case you didn't know, fiscal year, that's our money year, the tax years, that doesn't go by the normal calendar. For those who care, Congress's fiscal year starts in October and it ends on the last day of September. So days sometimes matter, but for you all, it's pretty much just pick a date that makes sense to you. Our author, she put in her article 4, this bill will be enacted July 1st, 2022. Great. So now you've told me what you're doing, definitions and qualifications, who's doing it, and when they're going to start. Okay? So now we get to the fifth one. Article 5 is always going to be the same. So right here, right now, you see exactly what you need to write for Article 5. Article 5 simply states, all laws in conflict with this legislation are hereby declared null and void. So the key thing to this is you've given me all this great stuff about what you're going to do, who's going to do it, qualifications, definitions. But what happens if there's a law that's already been passed that says, no, you can't do that, or no, that's not how it works? You have to have this section down here so that way it says, no, this one takes priority over that past law. So what I'm doing now is legal under the law. So very important to include this statement at the end. The final thing, after you've gone through all the trouble of writing your articles, numbering, is give yourself credit for your bill. At the bottom of your bill, put your name and your congressional position. So right here I have it written, respectfully submitted by Representative, that's my congressional position, my name, Raymond Smith, and then you can put Jefferson Forest High School right at the bottom, and you have yourself a completed bill. Notice that there are no line numbers, so this comes after line numbers. And so with that, that gives you now all the information you should need in order to format and write yourself a perfectly good student Congress bill. So just remember, look at the formats, make sure that you've got your line numbers, and then just go through and ask yourself the essential questions. What am I doing? What are the qualifications or definitions for what I'm doing? Who is going to enforce it? When is it going to take effect? And lastly, I got to make sure I'm able to do it. So that last one is declaring everything else that could possibly say I can't do it, it's gone. So I'm perfectly legal in what I'm doing. And so with that, that is all I have to say on writing bills. Best of luck to you, and have yourself a great day.